Kia ora and welcome to Deep Dives with Will and Reubs.
A show that is making accounting cool again.
I'm Will.
And I'm Reubs.
And today we have creative destruction.
Yes, this is the theme or the episode where we focused on people in their first 2 years of business.
Yeah, so if you're just getting started or you want to get started in business, these are the sort of these are the episodes that are going to help you make some good decisions and give you a little bit of guidance on how we actually go about taking an idea, testing it, and taking it to market and creating an income and a lifestyle for yourself.
Brilliant! Couldn't have put it better myself. So today, or last episode, we actually talked about the hedgehog principle, the intersection of your skills, something you really care about, and some monetary reimbursement, something other people care enough about to pay for. So the intersection of that is your business. Now, hopefully since then you've done your homework, which is to find a business that fits in that little golden triangle. In this episode, we're going to be covering what do we do next.
Yeah, so if you found, so we sort of talked about, where we can find these ideas. How do we get this inspiration? So it's between either a couple of skills we can merge together to give you a unique skill set that you can take to market, or you can look at taking an existing skill set and finding a passion of yours, and then you can merge those two, and then that's your business. So what we want to do now is, now that we've identified what we want to do, what problem we want to solve, what's our next step? What do we do after that?
Well, I think you need some way to figure out if you have a business or not, because at the moment all you've got is an idea of what may be. So how do we need to figure out who's going to buy it, what does the service look like, if it's a service or a product, what does it look like, who's going to buy it, how much they're going to pay for it, how many they're going to buy, how frequently, where am I going to sell it, all these sorts of things.
But before we get into that, Reubs, we've got our quote of the week.
What is our quote of the week?
So this one's from Napoleon Hill, and I'm going to get a little bit of help here. Didn't quite memorize this one, but it's a really good one. It's, great achievement is usually born of great sacrifice and is never the result of selfishness.
That kind of that's similar to what you alluded to in previous episodes, where you were talking about creating something, not being trying to build a business just so you can look rich or be rich.
Exactly. Yeah.
If that's not only going to get you so far. If you want to be motivated, if you want to build a successful business, you need to be solving it. You need to have something you care about and something other people care about, a purpose beyond just the need to be wealthy.
Yeah, the way I think about it is, if you want something bad enough, it will happen. Now, if you have 100,000 people who want something, and you have that thing, it's not just one person that's trying to figure this out. There's hundreds of thousands of people who are your customers, who are looking for a solution. And then all it is, it's just it's the connection of people that want to solve a problem. That's something that they want this problem solved, and then what you're doing is you're presenting a solution to their problem, and as soon as you connect, it all happens a lot faster. So if my objective is to buy a Ferrari and a batch, for example, and I'm going to do everything I can, I'm going to create online courses, and I'm going to try and sell through sales funnels and try to do stuff that's going to make me money, and my drive is to make me money.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, really, really hard. But if my drive is not about a Ferrari and about a batch, if my drive is that I believe that my customers deserve better access to the information for their business, and I want to be the one who delivers that information to them better than anyone else and provide better customer support, and that's what drives me, that's what gets me out of bed, that's going to happen for me, because my purpose and my drive is not about fulfilling my dream, it's about fulfilling the dreams of other people. It's about fulfilling solving a problem for other people. And I think you can be more passionate and you can get more drive out of helping other people than you can trying to buy materialistic things. And I think I spent a lot of time the early years in business was all about me. It's all about Will, all about building the ego and showing people how successful I was. But once that flipped and I saw the impact I can have on people's lives by delivering them the software that we're building, that is now what drives me, And I think that once that happens, then things start falling into place. And that's why I think it's a really powerful quote, that these great achievements don't come from selfishness. They come from a desire to serve those who are serving others.
Yeah, often, I don't know if you said it or I said it or we stole it from someone else, but it's quite easy to become a billionaire. You just have to make 1,000 other millionaires.
That's right.
So if you can make 1,000 other people millionaires, you will be a billionaire.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, when your purpose is bigger than you, that's when things will start clicking. And that's why I feel like it did take us a few years to really get off the ground and get our business to where it is today. It's because I spend a lot of time trying to do things for Will. But once the focus became off trying to do things for Will and doing it for my customers, and that was my real passion, my real drive, that's where we started getting this momentum. And I think it's just such an important lesson to learn.
Absolutely, especially, and it's a good way to start a business.
Absolutely.
If that's your focus from the beginning, then your journey will be a lot quicker, hopefully, than ours.
Yeah, because you find a passion. And when things are not going so well, and your drive is to buy things and look good in front of your neighbor and your friends. When things are not going well, you get frustrated, and then you get down, and then that's where you run into all these roadblocks, and it's hard to continue. But if your drive is to help these people, it doesn't matter what happens along the way, because you're patient, because you have an objective that is bigger than you. You've got a bigger purpose than making yourself look good to other people. Just such an important thing to understand. I really, if you can take anything away from this, that is an important thing to understand.
Good lesson to learn.
Yeah.
All right, so today, in the last episode, we already covered what we went through around the hedgehog principle. What we're getting into next is, what do you do next? How do you decide if you have a business or an idea that's worth pursuing? Do you have a business at all, or is it just an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little bit of a side point on that is, when you're starting out, you're about to get started. You've got your idea. You're about to get ready to make it happen. Really important to run a business from day one. Focus on revenue generating activities. Do spend the minimum amount of money to start bringing in revenue and starting to test your idea, test your product or your service. Cheaply, exactly.
So learn cheap lessons.
That's right. The mistake I made for many years was that I tried to do things too quickly. I thought I was in startup mode, because we see it everywhere. You see the entrepreneurs online that have got their flash cars, they've got the Mercedes, and they've got the house and all that sort of thing. And it's because they've gone and got investors, and they go and spend all this money. And it's like, no, but if you can just focus on getting a product to market and not trying to live in startup world, run a business from day one. I think that's really, really important.
Totally. And so, that's to do with like debt. Obviously, not
totally.
Borrowing necessarily from day one for stuff that you have yet to earn a return on. Maybe
if you can go buy a $2,000 Corolla, you don't need a BMW. You don't need all the fancy stuff.
Absolutely.
Try really keep your debt to an absolute minimum. There are times where you need a little bit of debt. Debt is leverage, and it's not always a bad thing. If you're trying to start a product business and you need to get a little bit of debt to fund your first purchase of these products, that's cool. But don't go and order huge amounts of products. Like a really good example, right, is if you're going to go and get some flyers done, and if you can get 200 done or you can get 1,000 done, just get 200 done. And then hand the 200 out and see what your ROI is on those 200. Because what you'll do is you'll get 1,000, you'll hand probably only 250 of them out, and then you'll throw the other 750 out and you've wasted money. So really try and spend the least amount of money as possible in your first sort of 12 to 24 months.
Absolutely. What about a business card?
Business cards, exactly. And then what's going to happen, I can guarantee it, is by the time you get all of those printed and they turn up and you've handed a few out, you're going to change your mind on what it says. You're going to have a new idea.
Yep, you'll have a new phone number, you'll have a new website, you'll have a new brand, you'll probably have a new company name, you'll have a different purpose.
That's right, things change. Yeah, so the lesson that I just want to communicate there is that try your best to keep as much money in your pocket as possible, or in the bank account as possible. Just be careful taking on too much debt in those early years.
Yeah, totally. We see a lot that people also, it's not that they aim too big, it's that they plan or execute too big, where they over-invest in the solution that they're trying to create for their customers. They're trying to automate things that don't even need automating yet. I see that all the time, especially in technology. People come to me and they want a B2B portal. They want it integrated with their Amazon. They want it connected to their 3PL provider. They want it multi-currency, connected to their accounting system. They want a sales tool. They want a CRM. They just want everything to work, right?
You're like,
and that's
man, you got no customers yet.
Awesome. I love the idea, because that's what we're all about. We love about connecting. We're Link. We're all about connecting that technology. But you can quickly spend a lot of money on those tools when you haven't even made your first sale yet. You don't even know if people want to buy your product or your service yet, or if your B2B channel is going to your business customers are even going to log in. Are they even going to log in? Do they like you enough to take their time out of their day to log into your website to order something?
Yeah, totally. It's such a good point, man. It's such a good point. So for example, right, let's say you have two systems, right? You have a website and you have a job management system. This is just an example, right? But let's say to create an integration between the two platforms is going to cost you $10,000. You can park that, because at the moment, let's say you want to, if it takes you 10 minutes to transfer the information between the two platforms, do that until you can look at it and go, right, well, that 10 grand, I'm going to return that 10 grand in 4 months because of the amount of time it's taking me. So do things manually in the meantime if it means that you're going to save a little bit of coin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, what we've done is I just quickly wanted to talk about debt, because I think that's really important. Don't get yourself into heavy debt. Focus on running a business, not getting into the startup mentality where you're trying to just like borrow until the money comes in. That's a terrible idea. I've done it. Trust me.
Scale. People, I hear that word a lot. People are like, how do I scale this? And I'm like, it makes me shudder. It's an awesome, when people talk about scale, they're talking about growth, and they're talking about rapid growth. How do I have a business that scales? And normally what they mean is, how do I have a business that grows without my time, or without any effort? How do I build a machine that creates value for people, that people will pay for, that requires absolutely no effort from me? That's a lot of people are trying to achieve that too soon. They haven't even qualified what their product or service looks like, whether people will pay for it, how they'll pay for it. And so I think you don't need to think about that right now. Think about bringing money in the door. Delivering good service, making good product, whatever it is industry you're in. Focus on doing that really well, consistently well, so you're making money, profit. It doesn't matter how manual those processes might be to start with. Then you can start looking at automating it. Then you can start looking at it, replicating it or scaling it. You don't go and take the lease out on 5 different cafes when you've never run a cafe.
You can be aware of, hey, in 10 years, I want to have 10 cafes. That's Absolutely. Great. You should be aware of what the long-term goal is, but you shouldn't set out in the first 2 years to have 5 leases, because that's not going to go well. Because what you haven't done is you haven't identified your processes, you haven't identified your hiring policy, you haven't established your culture, you haven't got your menu sorted, you haven't, there's so many things you haven't done. So what you want to do is make it work at a small scale first, and then scale should be a focus once you run into the problems of delivery because of the burden of the I suppose the time burden on the delivery. So scale, what Rube said is perfect. Is don't focus on scaling in the first couple of years. Focus on doing a really good job and solving a problem for the few people that you have. Consistently well. Yeah. If
you're still, if you're in services, if you've still got the fucking up projects, or you've got disgruntled customers, if you've got, or you've got losses happening on jobs, or even if it's 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 20, you still got that happening on a regular basis. Maybe you can't find reliable staff because whatever industry you're in, they're hard to find. Imagine that problem times 10. That's what you get when you try to scale. Okay, little problems get exacerbated. The money grows, but the little problems they also grow, and it's exponential.
Definitely.
Because they interact. So if you've got one, let's imagine I've got one cafe that can't find chefs in its local area. Now what happens when I open 3 more? And then I've got one chef who's doing cooking for 3 different cafes. And the problems grow from there, and you're just causing yourself more headaches.
Definitely, and it's and you just run into all sorts of problems, like hiring problems. You need to make sure your processes are really watertight before you even think about scaling anything.
Absolutely, yeah. So you said run a business, not a startup, and do that from day one. So a startup doesn't document how things are done or how things should be done. So they're in the business of making as much money as possible as quickly as possible, or spending as much money as possible as quickly as possible. Normally,
I know the Fairytail is you'll start a business and then you're going to have the Facebook or the Uber or the growth of these companies.
Yeah,
these things. But something to understand is that that's not going to happen to you. That's not going to happen to you. That's just so rare. It's like winning lotto 5 times in 5 weeks for that to ever happen. And you got to think about the actual work that went behind that. Mark Zuckerberg, he spent years and years and years writing code before he even started writing a line of code for Facebook, So if you think you're just going to start a business and it's going to happen overnight, it's not going to. It's going to take you 5 years before, maybe 3, if you do really well and if you don't make huge mistakes like I did, you could probably be living pretty comfortably in 3 years if you execute everything well. And once you hit 5 years, again, if you haven't had any train wrecks, you should be sitting pretty well. But that's your time frame, 3 to 5 years. It's not going to happen in 18 or 24 months.
Totally. So when we're starting out, we're trying to spend as little as possible in order to test our hypothesis about what a business might look like. Along the way, we're documenting it as we go so that we have it written down so we can see what it looks like, so we can change it deliberately, not just changing it randomly. So it's a bit more scientific than I think what a lot of people give a business startup credit for. They think it's very fluid, very creative, but take a scientific approach to the changes you make and test and adjust, as
Absolutely.
you go, and fail frequently, but on a small scale. Yeah.
So what we've just touched on now is we've looked at the fact that you should be running a business and not a startup, and by that we mean you need to be focusing on bringing in revenue into the business rather than bringing on debt and just focusing on all these startup activities, the stuff that you see online and all the fairy tale stories you see. We've also talked about how to not worry about scale until you've actually solved the problem for a few people. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is what's that first step for you? So you've got your idea. Now, what do? I think the first thing you should do is a cash flow forecast.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Cash flow forecast is absolutely
Even
fundamental.
before you've got a customer, you should have a look at, on paper, do I have a business?
Before you even get a logo designed.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first thing you should do is cash flow forecast. So what is a cash flow forecast?
Well, it's a prediction or a forecast of what your cash flow would look like. And cash flow is made up of 2 different numbers, I guess. You've got money in and then money out. Okay, money in comes from things like revenue, so sales, fees, or whatever it is you're doing, product sales. And then money out comes from a whole lot of different places. And you've got like the direct costs, or like the people when you're paying your suppliers, for example, or your staff, or whatever that might look like. Then you've also got overheads. Those are things that don't change or don't increase much by the more units you sell. So one is a variable thing. If I sell 5 units, I'm going to have 5 times the cost. But one of them is very fixed. It's the things I need that are the same price. So it might be a domain name. It's $150 for my domain name every year. McRubenburger.com. Okay, this is a burger I'm making up, and so that's a fixed cost. Doesn't matter how many McRubenburgers I sell, I'm still paying $150 a year for that. Okay, so it's good to separate those out, and the revenue less your costs is going to give you what is in your bank account. So you're going to have an opening balance, hopefully, of some seed capital, something you put in to just get it started, and then your goal is to keep that number above 0.
Yeah, and what you also got as well as Ruben said, is you've got your revenue, that's the money coming in, and you've got your expenses, the money going out, whether it be fixed costs or variable costs, and then you've also got to consider the fact that you've got tax payments to be making if you are making money. So you need to be factoring those into your forecast as well.
That's a big one that catches people out. They go, great, I've made profit at the end of year 1 of $60,000. That's freaking awesome. But then what they don't count into a cash flow forecast is the fact that I've got tax to pay on that for the following year in, say, 3 installments or something.
That's right. And now this is my number one piece of advice I've got for a cash flow forecast is when you are looking at predicting your revenue, don't just go $10,000 this month, $20,000 next month, $30,000 the next month. What you want to do is you need to go, right, well, what products or what services do I sell? So let's say, for example, I have a commercial cleaning business.
Right? Good example.
Now, what I do is I might have a service where I do a brief clean, and I've got a thorough clean,
and I've got a deluxe.
So I've got 3 different cleaning services, right? So what I want to do is I want to create my cash flow forecast in a way where I have the service as a line item, and then I'm going to say how many of these will I sell this month. So you got to think about this really, really practically, and you go, right, well, right now we're in October. In November, if I'm starting my forecast in November, how many of these deluxe cleans will I actually sell? How many prospects do I need to meet with? How many quotes do I need to send? What's my acceptance rate? Is that going to give me how many of these services? And then you can put that number in. Maybe it might be 2, and then it multiplies the 2 by the cost of the service, which is $500. And I go, cool, well, I'm making $1,000 off that for this month. Then do the next one. Don't just put a figure in for your revenue.
Totally.
Put in a quantity multiplied by the price of your product or service, and then once you've done that, you can see your revenue for the month. And then once you deduct your expenses, it is the most sobering thing you can do, because you'll realize how hard it is to run a business.
Absolutely. Like we talk about, what did you describe it as? Relentless optimism? No? Drunk on optimism?
Drunk on optimism. It's really easy to go, I'll make $50,000 next, in 6 months' time, I'll make $50,000 a month. And you go, well, man, if you break that down, how many services do you need to sell? Okay, well, I need to have this many times this many. Okay, well, how many sales meetings do I need to do? So what are our conversion rates? Realistically, you're going to be probably not converting 50% of the opportunities you meet with. So how many sales calls do I need to make? How many flyers do I need to send? How many people do I need to meet with in order to send these quotes and close these opportunities to bring the revenue in the door? And once you start breaking that down, it's sobering, man. It really is.
Totally.
So before you do anything, before you spend money on any marketing, before you spend any money on even going talking to customers, I'd recommend sitting down and doing a cash flow forecast and getting some numbers or some expectations on how many you need to sell to make this business viable. And if you can do a cash flow forecast over 12 months and you can go, right, well, by the end of 12 months, I'm not bankrupt, or I'm not heavily in the red, then you can go, well, this is actually looking pretty good. Now I go to my next stage, which would be looking at talking to some customers and finding out whether the problem I'm solving is shared by everyone else, or whether it's a problem that I've come up with myself to make myself feel good, so I can then go start a business and make me think that I'm actually going to make some money. But we can save that for next time.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people put a lot of, actually, I see some good cash flow forecasts around expenses and direct costs, and that people have a, even before they start their business, they have a good idea around those. They know what a van is going to cost them to lease. They know what parts are going to cost, if they're reselling, maybe I'm a plumber or something, right? I know what I'm going to spend on materials, and I know, all those fixed costs, but then they don't comprehend, they don't break out their revenue. They just pick a number, and then what they typically do is they go times 1.05 for every month, and they drag that along, and they go, great, I'm assuming a 5% growth every month, so they start with $10,000 and it just grows from there. That's the worst possible way you could do it. You need to be looking at where am I going to find those customers? How many people, like you said, break it down. It's got the more you can break that revenue line item down to the most nitty gritty number of flyers, number of people, number of bums on seats, or people in the door, or visits, or whatever you got to do to make a sale in the first place, the better off you'll be, and the more sobering an answer you'll get, and the least likely you'll be to be out of business in a year's time.
That's right, spot on, man. Awesome. Well, looking forward to next month, because I want to go into that next step. Once we've done a cash flow forecast and everything looks good, what do we do from there?
How do we test our assumptions on this? From this bit of paper.
That's right. But I think we're running out of time, so let's look at wrapping up on this one, and
see you next month.